So I have 9 siblings. That's how I'm starting this video. Growing up with siblings is a blessing and a curse. On one hand, you're basically given a free friend who will be there for you when times get rough, which as a child pretty much boils down to scraping your knee or something. But on the other hand, well, it's tough to describe. One of the trends I've seen fairly often is that people without siblings always think about how awesome it would be to have them, and people with siblings always think about how much better their life would be if they were an only child. In my personal opinion, how much enjoyment you'll get out of having siblings really depends on whether you're the older one or the younger one. That sounds really stupid now that I say it out loud. Personally, I've had experience with both. Out of my 9 siblings, 6 of them are older than me, 3 brothers and 3 sisters, and 3 are younger, being 2 sisters and 1 brother. Now, this would make me the middle child, but in actuality, the siblings that I have that are older than me are all in their 20s and 30s, and 4 of them are either married or engaged. I think the one closest in age to me is like 7 or 8 years older than me, so I only had a short amount of time being the younger sibling. Ever since my little brother came into the picture, I've been the proud older sibling, which has quite a few perks, but also quite a few shortcomings. Now, there are quite a few stories I want to share, but I also want to give at least a tiny story for all of them. For this, I'll start off with the ones that I spent the least time with, being my 3 older sisters. Weirdly enough, the main thing I remember relating to each of them mainly has to do with their houses, which is a bit weird, but considering they're all quite a bit older than me, the only real memories I have with them are the times I've visited their houses. Also, for the sake of simplicity and privacy, I guess, I'll just be referring to them by their first initial, so my sisters will be referred to as J, K, and N. Starting off with J, God, this feels so weird. Each year at around Christmas time, my family that I live with go off to visit them and catch up. Now, I'm an introvert, let's be honest, what did you expect? So after a little bit of socializing, I'd usually go off and do my own thing. Strangely enough, the main memories I have from my time at their house are all related to Pokemon. I remember on Christmas Eve, I spent quite a few hours right before I went to sleep beating Alpha Sapphire by the Christmas tree on the couch. And for whatever reason, this is a really fond memory for me. I also remember looking at Pokemon memes in their basement while I worked on my history fair project, which also happens to be a video that I made a while back. Don't watch it, please. It's actually really bad. However, the main memory I have from their house is this little rocking chair that they had on their second floor. Now, the way their house is laid out, the second floor is on a balcony kind of thing right above the dining room. So while the adults were conversing and catching up, I was directly above them, partially listening in, as well as replaying through Pokemon X, and trying to complete Alpha Sapphire from a few hours prior to the previous story-ish thing. At one point in the day, my little cousin came up to the chair while I was attempting to catch Kyogre, which is one of the main events in the story, in case you weren't aware. Spoiler alert, I guess, though it shouldn't really be because it's on the box cover. Anyway, she was peeking over my shoulder looking at me play the game as the cutscene commenced. She said, "Wow, you're doomed," which got a good old belly laugh out of me. Another story relating to Pokemon, because I can't think of a better transition, takes place at my other sister N's house. I'm just now noticing that N is also a character in Pokemon, so this all kinda ties together. This time it was more of the adults setting me off to the side with a distraction so that they could catch up without me being the distraction, being the obnoxious little kid that I was. What ended up happening was my sister set me up in her bedroom, turned on the TV, and changed the channel to Cartoon Network, where they were playing a marathon of the Diamond and Pearl saga of the Pokemon anime, and I was pretty much hooked for the next 3 or 4 hours. Quite an uneventful story, but I'll get onto the slightly more interesting ones now. You just got pranked! I still have a few more slightly mundane stories about houses and my other sister. I swear the topic of this video is siblings, just give me a minute. The main things I remember about Kay are that she had some very weird houses. The first one I remember was a trailer home at a trailer park, which I know isn't super wacky or strange, but it was pretty mind-blowing for tiny little 8-year-old me. The second one was a dome house, which, while I'm sure it still isn't mind-blowing, it was still fairly uncommon where I was from, and it's something that I've only seen once. It was just this little ball thing popping out of the ground, which I thought was super cool. At this point in the video, I should have a little image up on screen demonstrating my point, because it seems like something that I'd have a fairly difficult time drawing, despite having used a circle tool for everything up until this point. Want to hear about the time I threw my brother into the TV? Of course you don't, let's go wee! Let's start with a callback to a previous video. In my old channel's video, I mentioned that I used to do origami in the family room of my old house. This story takes place in the room right next to it. This isn't really important end of the story, I just didn't know the name for the room, so I decided to do this instead, because it's the first thing I thought of. Up against the wall of the room was our television, but it wasn't one of those fancy flat screen ones, no. This was one of those box televisions. Anyone remember those things? Those things were a mess. Anyway, the TV was placed in this whole set thing, which was used partially to support it, but also to place the VHS and DVD player on, and all that sort of stuff. A bit off to the side was the mattress that me and my brother were messing around on, and doing our whole sibling routine. At one point, I either picked him up, pushed him, or straight up threw him, but somehow I managed to fall off the mattress and go headfirst into the television. I think most people with a younger sibling can relate to this, but the second you injure them in any form, you know that you're pretty much dead meat. Everything kinda went into a panic as I tried to calm him down, with the whole, "Oh, I'll let you hurt me back" kinda thing. I ran out into the family room and started heading towards the kitchen, but right then I noticed that my mom was rushing over to see what happened. It was at this point that I kinda knew my fate was sealed. I ran over to the freezer, grabbed an ice pack, and went back into the room, hoping for the best. At this point, there was no running away. And now for the semi-final segment of this video, I'll talk a little bit about my little sisters, which despite living with, I really don't have a ton of incredibly interesting stories about. Both of my younger sisters are adoptive, so the first time we met, I tried my best to make a good impression. The first thing I did to introduce myself was reading them a story, which was something that I thought was just a small gesture, but as it turns out, this left a major imprint as me being a kind older brother. As you can imagine, this didn't really last very long, and every time I got mildly annoyed or was simply indifferent, it seemed much more cruel in contrast to their initial impression, and they've ended up being the evil older brother. Around a year ago, last wintertime, I took my youngest sister to the park for her to play around. This, while being fairly fun at first, ended up being pretty miserable. At some point around an hour or so after we arrived, I started to get really cold, and I was fairly hungry as well. However, my little sister didn't share my pain, and wanted to go hang around for another hour or so and continue to play. Eventually, it got to the point where I pretty much couldn't take it anymore, so I tried to get her to come home with me. I managed to get her to walk home, but she was definitely not happy about it. So much so, to the point where the entire walk home was filled with insults. My personal favorite of which being, "You'll never get married." Now, for the final segment of this video, I intend to talk about my older brothers, but thinking about it now, I really don't have that many interesting stories to share. The only memories I have with the oldest one are his wedding, and his wife having the same name as my mom, which is extremely confusing to 6 or 7-year-old me. My second oldest brother is sort of the same case, though I do have a few more memories with him than some of my other brothers, just nothing really video worthy. One thing I can say though is that he looks quite a bit like me in many ways, especially when he was younger. Get it? Because all of my characters are the same? No? Okay. I remember seeing this group photo of pretty much our entire family back when he was a kid, and when you compared how he looked then with how I looked at the time of seeing the picture, we were practically identical, with the only noticeable difference being our hair and eye colors. He also introduced me to Minecraft, so that was pretty neat. To finish this video off, I'll talk about the final sibling that I haven't talked about yet. I'll call him N. Oh wait, I already used that, who is the youngest of my older brothers. Now my story with N is pretty much an awful roommate story, but not quite, because that's a huge exaggeration. At one point a few months ago, I was informed that my brother was going to be staying with us for a short period of time, and that he would be sleeping in my room because we didn't have any extra bedrooms, and I had the most unused space. What I didn't realize was that he wasn't just going to be staying for a couple of days, he was going to be staying for around a month, which was pretty much the experience of living with a roommate. Now, truthfully, when I say that he was a bad roommate, that really isn't entirely true. The worst things he did were bringing a ton of coffee mugs downstairs and not putting down the toilet seat when he was finished. Both of these things are things that I really don't mind, particularly the toilet seat, which is a formality that I honestly don't care about, not counting the sanitary issues. But you see, there's an issue. If you recall from my flooding video, the toilet in my bathroom has this bad habit of not stopping when it's supposed to, and we actually discovered the reason for it. Leaving the toilet seat up. What happens is that the toilet seat manages to jam the lever upwards, so that it's pretty much always using water. And let me tell you, it wasn't fun having my mom come to me at the end of the month with complaints about the higher water bill. To end off this video on a positive note though, I'm really glad that I have siblings. They've made my life a lot more interesting, and I'm just thankful, I guess. This video took a lot longer to make than my other ones, and I really tried to make it an improvement from my previous one, so leave a like or something. I don't know, I don't like asking for likes because it just feels weird. Kind of like just letting the video speak for itself, but I don't know where I'm going with this. Okay, bye.